Okay, here's something that doesn't quite add up. Every glass of milk you drink came from a cow. But cows only produce milk after they've had a calf, which means for every dairy cow, there's a baby. And roughly half of those babies are male. So what happens to all those male calves? Do farmers raise them for milk? Do they become beef cattle? Do they just disappear from the system entirely? And why did humans build an entire industry where one sex of the animal became incredibly valuable, while the other became a byproduct almost nobody talks about? The answer starts with one tiny biological fact, and it completely reshaped the dairy industry. First, there's an important distinction. Male dairy calves absolutely can be eaten. There's nothing about their meat that makes it inedible or dangerous. The real question is, why don't dairy farms treat them the same way beef farms treat their cattle? And the answer comes down to economics. Because cows, just like chickens, have basically become two different animals. One type is bred for milk. The other is bred for meat. They're both cattle. But humans have pushed their biology in completely different directions. Let's start with the dairy cow herself. A modern dairy breed, like a Holstein, is an incredible biological machine. She can produce thousands of liters of milk a year. But here's the catch. A male calf can't produce a single drop of milk in his entire life. That sounds obvious. But think about what that means for a commercial dairy farm. The farm needs females, lots of them. A male calf doesn't produce milk. And if you raise him for months or years, you're spending money on feed and land without getting the product the farm was actually built around. That's the first problem. But there's another. Male calves from dairy breeds aren't particularly good meat animals either. They're usually leaner, they grow more slowly for beef purposes, and they don't convert feed into muscle as efficiently as specialized beef cattle. A modern beef breed, like an Angus, has been selectively bred for one thing: grow, fast, put on muscle efficiently. A dairy breed isn't built that way. It's built to produce milk, so raising its male offspring for meat can be economically inefficient, compared to just raising a specialized beef animal from the start. And this is where humans made a strange decision, one they'd already made once before, with an entirely different animal. Instead of trying to make one type of cow do everything, milk and meat both, we created two specialized versions. Think about a car factory. You could build one machine that makes 10 different products, switching between them as needed. Or you could build 10 separate machines, each optimized for exactly one job. The second option is almost always more efficient at scale. That's exactly what happened with cattle. And it's exactly what happened decades earlier with chickens, split into egg-laying breeds and meat breeds, for the same underlying economic reason. Now here's the part that surprises a lot of people. The cow that produced your milk this morning isn't the same type of animal that produced the beef in your dinner tonight. Modern dairy breeds have been bred for extraordinary milk output. Modern beef breeds have been bred for rapid, efficient muscle growth. They're almost completely different agricultural tools, wearing the same species, and that creates the male-calf problem. Because when you're producing dairy cows, you don't need half the calves born. You need the females. The males are essentially a biological byproduct of producing the females you actually need. Historically, this problem looked completely different. Cattle used to serve multiple roles at once, pulling plows, providing milk, eventually becoming meat, and even holding religious or ceremonial significance in some cultures. In parts of the ancient world, cattle were symbols of wealth and status. Owning cattle, regardless of their sex, meant something socially, not just economically. A male calf wasn't automatically a problem. He might become a draft animal, pulling equipment for years. He might be raised slowly for beef, on the same small farm as his mother. The economics were forgiving enough that his existence made sense. Modern commercial dairy farming works differently. Large-scale operations produce enormous numbers of calves every year, and they don't need nearly that many males for breeding. So the question becomes, what can you actually do with the rest of them? Historically, one answer became unfortunately common. Male dairy calves were often slaughtered within days of being born. In the UK, they're sometimes referred to as bobby calves. Not because they were dangerous, sick, or biologically unwanted, simply because raising them further wasn't considered economically worth it, compared to raising a specialized beef breed instead. This practice became one of the more quietly controversial aspects of modern dairy farming, but farmers and scientists eventually started looking for other solutions. And this is where things get interesting. What if you could determine the sex of a calf before it was even born, or find a better use for the males that were being born anyway? On the chicken side of this same problem, scientists developed a technology called in ovo sexing, methods that attempt to identify the sex of a developing chicken embryo while it's still inside the egg, so male eggs never have to hatch at all. The dairy industry moved towards something similar, but different: sexed semen technology. Using laboratory techniques to sort cattle semen based on the sex chromosome it carries, farmers can now dramatically increase the odds of a calf being born female in the first place. It's basically the same underlying idea as in ovosexing, trying to solve a biological economic problem before it happens, rather than dealing with the consequences afterward. But there's an older, more direct solution too. Just raise the males for meat. And increasingly, that's exactly what happens. Some male dairy calves are raised for a specific product called veal, meat from young cattle, slaughtered earlier than typical beef cattle. Others are crossbred, mated with beef bull genetics, to try to combine both worlds, faster growth alongside their dairy origins. And a growing number are simply raised as standard beef cattle, just starting their lives a bit differently than a calf born from two beef parents would. The problem was, never that male dairy calves couldn't be used. It's that using them profitably takes deliberate effort, in a system that wasn't originally built with them in mind. Now here's where it gets more interesting still. This entire situation only exists because humans decided, over the last century or so, to specialize cattle the exact same way they specialized chickens. One type of cow optimized purely for milk output. Another type, completely separate, optimized purely for meat production. Historically, this distinction barely existed at all. Most cattle did several jobs reasonably well: milk when needed, labor when needed, meat eventually. But specialized dairy breeds produce so much more milk than a general-purpose cow ever could that the economics gradually pushed the entire industry toward extreme specialization. Once that happened, the male calf's role in the system quietly disappeared. Here's the strange part, though. The male dairy calf isn't biologically defective or somehow a mistake. He's genetically half of exactly what the industry wanted. The other half just happened to be male instead of female, which means his fate was never really about him, specifically, at all. It was decided the moment humans bred one type of cow purely for milk and built an entire economic system around a product only half of the calves born into that system could ever produce. So why don't we treat male dairy cows the same way we treat standard beef cattle? It's not because their meat is inedible or because there's anything biologically wrong with them. It's because somewhere along the way, humans split cattle into two specialized jobs, milk and meat, the same decision they'd already made with chickens, egg breeds, and meat breeds for the exact same economic reasons. And a male calf, born into the milk half of that system, ended up caught in the middle of an industry built almost entirely around his sisters.